Okay, everybody. My name is Dr. John McAtamney. I want to welcome you to the Long Island Band of Brothers. Our special guest tonight is Dr. Tim Kelly. He practices upstate New York. He's been on the council board for quite a while. I remember Tim from school. We graduated just a couple months apart. He runs a really big family-oriented practice, I think in East Greenbush, if I'm not correct.
Yep.
And he was awarded the Beacon, fellow Beacon myself. So I know what kind of work that takes. That's the highest award that the council gives for service. So Tim, thanks for blessing us with your presence tonight.
Well, thanks for having me, John. I appreciate all that you do for the council as well. And I know that there's other things that we could do with our time, but we certainly have to give back to this profession that's given us so much. So a couple of things I want to talk about tonight. Really, it's three things. One is integrity, congruency, and what's your dash look like? Okay. Because in chiropractic, we've got the clinical hand and the business hand, and it truly is a balancing act. Um, and the what, the how, and the why, the Simon Sinek type of stuff in the world. What are you doing in your practice? How are you doing it? And why are you doing it? And then is your team members, are they congruent with your message? And do they understand what your message is? Okay. Because I think that's a super important component. Unless your team members understand your why, how do your practice members ever get the why? Okay. And I know I've been guilty of this for a lot of years of telling team members what to do, the direction, but not give them a why of why we want to do that. Okay. How does the way we describe things or the way we do things in our practice move practice members? And I think it's a super important thing to say, okay, look at the what, the how, and the why in your practice, and make sure all your team members understand your why, not just the what and the how. Okay. Because it's easy to just, for lack of a better way to say it, whip people with a whip and say, just do it this way. But if you give them a why, they'll have a much bigger reason to say, that makes total sense, doc. Let's get clear with that. Okay. And then, of course, having clarity behind your why gives them clarity with your vision, your wants, and goals. Okay. So what are those wants, goals in your practice? Is it a cash practice? Is it an insurance practice, pediatric, family, sports, etc.? And very often, especially in philosophical chiropractic circles, where people say, well, I don't want to see elderly, I don't want to see pediatrics. It's okay not to want to see a certain population if you don't feel comfortable with that population. I'm really good with that. But understand, don't be fake and say, I don't want to see kids. And all of a sudden the kid comes into your practice. You're not going to give them the 1,000% of your time, effort, and your love. So I think that's an important thing to get really clear with your targets and goals with your practice members and your team members. But at the same time, have your goals congruent with your values. Okay. Um, and what are those values that you have? Your congruency issues. Is your exam congruent with your philosophy? Okay. Is your marketing congruent with your philosophy? I'll see chiropractors that will do a spinal screening for postural changes and then never look at posture ever again in their practices. And I'm like, it's not very congruent with, and these are all things that kind of can keep chiropractors up at night saying to themselves, well, gosh, I'm incongruent with that step. I'm incongruent with that step. The more congruency factors you have, and none of us are 100% congruent. I want to be really clear with that. There's always some incongruencies that you're working towards at all times. But I think looking at a self-check congruency is really critical to allow for practice growth. Okay. What's our table talk look like? Is that congruent with your values? Okay. If you believe in a practice where it's not symptom based, is the very first question you're asking every practice member that come in, how are you feeling today? It's not very congruent with your goals, values, and what you want out of your practice. Okay. So table talk is a huge component to look at your congruency issues. When you start talking about muscle stiffness and you got tightness over here, is that congruent with the model that you want to have? And I'm not saying it's a right or wrong model. If you want to do the tightness and stiffness and soreness model, that's okay. That's what you've chosen to do. But just make sure it's congruent with the philosophy that you say that you have and that you really want to have. So then are your procedures set up to allow for that? Okay. Is your exam procedures congruent with the subluxation model that you choose to practice within? And that can be really fun. Look at your exam procedures, and I used to practice a very segmental approach when I got out of NYCC. So you came in with lower back pain, and I'm going to use some really nasty terms. I would treat your lower back, okay, get rid of your lower back pain, and then wonder why these patients, and I say patients meaningfully, I would wonder why they would not stay on for wellness care, and in my head, I wanted wellness care, but my procedures weren't congruent with that. So when we started flipping the verbiage to say practice members instead of patients, when we started flipping the verbiage of muscle tightness and stiffness and soreness to lock, stuck, fixed, those types of scenarios, it just made a dramatic shift in our practice. Not overnight, but over time, it makes these shifts, which can be a lot of fun because now your practice is really starting to run towards a wellness-driven, congruent practice, which allows for growth because you've got clarity. And incongruencies lead to that leaky bucket. And how often am I at a seminar? All of us are at seminars, and you hear doctor after doctor, either on the stage or at the bar, saying, "Man, I could just use more new patients." Okay, and the reality is, we don't need new patients. Patients need us, okay? And I'm sure all of us have heard that on this call in the past, so it's not something new. Patients need us. And when we change that mindset to I need new patients versus they need me, what a change in your attitude, okay? And especially come from a position of love on that. But so your incongruencies lead to major leaky buckets. What are the incongruencies that you might be having that you just haven't looked at, or you haven't said to yourself, you know what, I need to study my practice a little bit and say, gosh, how do I make this thing bigger? How do I make it more congruent with my values, more integrity? And when I use that word integrity, some people are like, well, gosh, what are you talking about integrity? I don't lie to practice members. Well, have you ever given them a shortchanged recommendation of care because maybe their insurance or they're a cash paying patient or whatever it may be, where you weren't totally integrity with the fact that they needed X number of visits, but you shortchanged them on that? So I'm going to say to you, it might be a gray area of integrity, but I'm going to say it's out of integrity with what that patient needs. Just be honest with them. Here's what it is. This is what it is. You don't have to accept my recommendation of care, but I'll support you in whatever decision you make. And that's a huge way to come from a position of power and just let them drive the show. But more often than not, and when I say that drive the show, they're really not going to drive the show in that sense, because now they're going to realize they need you and you don't need them. Some other thoughts I've had on that, on the congruency model, is just what's your marketing efforts look like as well, okay? And I know we talked about the spinal screenings, but are we looking at marketing that looks for the pain syndrome? When I see a sign that says, the back and neck pain relief center, and then you're wondering why patients don't stay on with you, okay? Because they're patients instead of practice members. So when we switch up even that level of congruency with our marketing, what are we putting out to the public as our marketing efforts? Because when they hear all the time it's a back and neck pain relief center, once their back and neck pain goes away, guess what they do? They leave as well, right? And then, so getting back to the congruency idea of what your procedures look like, we look at patient care progress reports as a very congruent way to say, we're going to check in on you. Okay, it's a progress report. We don't do re-exams because I don't re-examine the same thing that I did initially. Okay. All of us know that the vast majority of the time, the orthopedic testing, if you're doing orthopedic testing at all, is nonsense after 12 visits. Okay. And I understand compliance issues too. I'm not saying be out of compliant, but I am saying be congruent with your patient procedures. So let's say a patient care progress report is just literally checking in. Are we seeing progress here? And it's a very congruent way to say, we're not going to do a re-exam. We're just going to check in on your progress. I'm very congruent with it. And then we look at a reassessment after a certain block of care. We're going to reassess to see where we're at in terms of some type of reconstructive wellness care down the road. Um, I guess the biggest thing for me is, when we look at those three things we talked about, it's integrity, congruency, and then so what's your dash? What are you going to be remembered for? At the end of the day, are you going to be remembered for the practice that was just a very big, robust practice? Patients got what they needed, what they wanted, long-term chiropractic wellness care, if that's something if you offer your practice members. And what's the legacy you've left because of that? Okay. Not only just legacy in terms of financial things, and finances are always wonderful. We all know that. But what's the legacy you've left to your community? And ultimately, what legacy have you left to chiropractic? When we built our office, we have a 8,000 square foot wellness center across from a 900 square foot office that I was in. And I made boatloads of money in a 900 square foot practice. And I never really needed to build a big wellness center, but I really did it because of chiropractic. I felt so chiropractic deserved that. And we've done very well there as well. But at the same time, I really did it because I look at that legacy for chiropractic to say, you know what, chiropractic can do all this and more. And, you look at Life University when you go down there and spend some time on that campus, it's just absolutely gorgeous. Some of the things that have been done on that campus. And it was because of a legacy. And I know there's been political things, blah, 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 but whatever. But nonetheless, I mean, you look at some of the beauty of that campus and why certain things were put together. It's because of a legacy. And the question I have for each and every one of you, what's your dash look like? What's your legacy going to be? And are you being in integrity with that and congruent with your procedure? So there's very few to no incongruencies in your practice to allow for the practice of your dreams, and a practice that you and I really all deserve, and our families deserve as well. So that's the exciting part. What questions do you guys have on that kind of stuff?
I have a question.
Yeah, John.
When you talk about being in integrity,
Yeah.
some people get that confused. I think when they talk about integrity, that's about self-characterization versus how they're perceived in the world. Peter Kevorkian talked about it this weekend on his last class. He said what he looks at being integrity was being as truthful as possible to yourself and also the people that you're serving.
Yeah.
So, that idea of being in truth and truthful.
And it's funny, John, I appreciate the question because, and I'm not saying that we as chiropractors willfully lie to practice members, okay? But I think we hold back the truth. Okay. We hold back the truth on so much of chiropractic because, one, maybe we don't know the research well enough. Maybe we don't have enough confidence in the way to say it. But even, increasing your resiliency through chiropractic, are we talking about that? Are we telling people the truth about that? I see it. Probably the most common thing that I see where chiropractors are out of integrity is they don't give big enough, robust enough recommendations to get the person to where they need to be and where they'd like to be. And ultimately,
I totally agree with you there because I think a lot of people, and I've coached with a couple of people, everybody's still giving 12-visit care plans.
Yeah.
Instead of telling people what they really need because that's what their insurance is going to pay.
Yeah, and I think that part of it's because they want to be liked. Okay, your job is not to be liked. Your job is to be in integrity and tell them exactly what they need. Okay, and giving them the out. You listen. If you don't like my recommendation, it's okay. Okay, I'm just going to tell you what you need, and it's really a freeing statement to let the person know right up from the get go. It's okay to say no to my recommendation. And we say that on a daily basis. It's okay to say no to my
Well, I think a
recommendation.
really good way to test your integrity is when you consider your vitality or wellness plan. How often do you yourself get checked? Do you check your family? And then are you telling your patients less than that?
Yeah, and one of the things I would say to you on that, John, is are we walking the talk? Okay. It is a huge component for each one of us to look in the mirror and say, are we walking the talk? Okay. And here's a really hard question. Would you go to you, and for how long? Okay. Would you go to you, and for how long would you go? Okay. Would you go once a week for the rest of your life? Okay. It's funny. I listened to Bill Esteb probably almost 20 years ago. And at that time, 20 years ago, he had gone through 8 chiropractors. Okay. And what's neat about it is the fact that he said all of them were great chiropractors. Okay. But he outgrew the chiropractor. And my question to you is, how many patients are outgrowing you? Okay. And how do you not let practice members outgrow you? One, you've got to stay up to speed. Okay. You've got to know what's cutting edge. Okay. I think in this world of podcasts and things, we can do a phenomenal job staying up to speed and being very up to date on what's happening, cutting edge today in health and wellness. And that doesn't mean you have to be everything for everybody, because you can't do that either, because you'll exhaust yourself. Okay. But I do think you need to have an understanding what's happening in health and wellness out there. Okay. Even if you don't do it, or, hey, I've got a guy that does it. And what I mean by guy, it could be a gal too. So no offense with that at all. But I've got a guy that knows that work really, really well.
Well, that's why you have to develop relationship with allied health professionals. A lot of guys don't do that. A lot of doctors
Absolutely.
don't.
Yeah, no question.
Anybody else have any other questions? I have another topic, but I don't want to hog the situation here.
Perfect.
Okay. So Tim, what do you think is the biggest 3 or 4 concepts when you're communicating with your practice members that you need to communicate to them so they have an understanding of your why?
Yeah, so I think that first and foremost is you have to have a case history that portrays chronicity. Okay. So when a person says to you, I threw my back out on Sunday, quite frankly, I'm writing down Sunday because I've got to be compliant. Okay. But I'm going to ask that question before Sunday. Okay. What's the very first time you've ever experienced any type of back pain at all? So I'm going to start right from the get-go, laying the groundwork that this is not since Sunday you've had this. It got really bad on Sunday, and now you can't play golf on Mondays, Monday night. So that's the reason why you're here today, okay? But there's chronicity that's occurring, okay? I also want them to know it takes time and repetition, okay? And time and repetition is something, and we describe time and repetition. You need time and repetition to get rid of this thing because it's like layers, okay? And then the other thing I think that's super important from the get-go, you let practice members know, I'm not going to check in on you each and every visit. So I do not expect changes from one visit to next, but in blocks of care, we expect changes, okay? In blocks of care. So now the person does not come to you every single visit and say, Doc, I still have that crick in my neck. I still have the lower back. I still have this. It throws it off the table. They do not tell me those things each and every visit, which is absolutely critical. So those 3 things I think are just massive. Chronicity, okay? Getting rid of this concept of the pain syndrome, okay? It's still there today, okay? And then also just the fact that you've got the controls here. It's time and repetition to let this thing happen. You've got to let the time and repetition occur for health and wellness to show up.
Okay, one more question.
Yeah.
Being in congruity, do you have a release procedure for a practice member who says, I think I've had enough for a while?
Yeah. So we ask practice members flat out on the reassessment. So we get blocks of care. Okay. So in blocks of care, and again, I think this is a brilliant line. Okay. So Mary, at this point, my recommendation for you is this. Okay. I certainly wouldn't abandon care at this point, abandon what we've done. But my recommendation would be this. And then they get to choose. I'm really okay with practice members leaving my practice. Okay. Now, do I love that? Of course I don't, because I feel for them. Okay. But when we phrase it that way, that they're going to abandon all the work we've done, okay, more often than not, practice members stay on, and they stay on for a lifetime. Okay. They just do. And that's not BS. There's no BS with that.
No, because you're speaking to their core values.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
And they've also spent a fair amount of money with us for that first block of care, and we tell them, don't abandon what we've done. Okay. Now, do I get people that, sure, they jump off the bandwagon? Of course they do. Life happens to people. But I would say to you is this: is that if too many life happenings are happening in your practice, okay, you have to reflect on what's happening in your practice. Okay. Are you off your value system? Are you incongruent with your procedures? Okay. And look at those things, self-reflect. Patients, they don't all suck. Okay. You know, I hear this from doctors. Oh, this patient was this, that, or the other thing. Well, no, let's look at in the mirror and figure out what you may be doing or what you may be missing.
Well, the simple thing there is if you're incongruency and you're full of integrity, you're actually, and because patients need you more than you need them,
Yeah, absolutely.
people come from you, not to you.
Yeah. And
You know?
understand that if you're truly giving them the best, okay, that's going to exude out of your system. That's going to exude to them being like, yeah, there's just no other option here. This is what I've got to stick with. Yeah.
A lot of meat and potatoes here, boys. Anybody else have any questions? Joanne, Rick, Gary, Jeff, anybody?
Tim, I like the use of the word abandon and abandonment. I never really thought about that, and I don't think I've even heard it presented the way you just did, and that kind of resonates with me. I think it
Beautiful.
also says to the patient that you know, by abandoning care, you're abandoning a commitment to yourself. And
No,
I think
exactly.
that's where the power lies in that one word alone. And I think, yeah, I'm gonna bring that into my dialogue. I think that was excellent. Thank you.
Beautiful. You're very welcome. Love it.
And anybody else?
Yeah, Tim, same with me. I underlined the word abandon when I wrote down that sentence that you said.
Right.
I love that term, and I've got so many little nuggets that you spit out.
Awesome.
Different ways of thinking or looking at the situation, which will make me more congruent. So thanks a lot for all the info.
You're very welcome. You know, one thing I would challenge each and every one of you to do is tape record one of your D1, your D2, and about 5 adjustments and listen to it.
Good idea.
Yeah, and you'll do one of two things. You'll say, "Holy heavens, I got some work to do," or you'll just vomit and be like, "Oh my gosh."
Yeah, we use a lot of weasel words, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it's the only way to clean
Alright.
things up. It's really the only way to clean things up.
You know, I've worked, because I'm still involved in the council, I've seen the rise of Tim. Him and I met at an ICPA thing, and I asked him to step up, and he did. Thank you very much for that. I've
Thank
watched
you.
what he's been doing. I know he has a lot left in him. But in the meantime, I want to thank you for coming on tonight. Anybody else? Just a little bit of thanks and love to Tim, please.
Thank you so much, Tim, for everything you shared with us tonight. I mean, you've given us a lot of things that we need to think about for our own practice.
Appreciate
And
that.
just going to implement what we can so this way we can be the best doctors for our patients.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
Tim, great
Beautiful.
stuff, man. It's
Thank you so much.
it's always great to hear what you know where you're vibing, okay? Because you know you hit so many different things. One of them, you know, when we have, I think when you're talking about being congruent and talking to your patients and really giving them what you know they need, the truth.
Yeah.
And the reason we don't is the fear of rejection.
Yeah.
And we're afraid. And the reality is, and one of the things that I know I got to a place finally is the realization that we know 100% more than these people that are standing in front
Absolutely.
of us.
Yes,
We are
absolutely.
the experts.
Yeah.
They don't know more than us. And we're just
Absolutely.
like, what are we supposed to be second guessing? Well, what do you think? What do you think here? You know,
Right.
we own it, and we
Yeah.
have to own it. I mean, we own it because we know it. We got to own it in there. And when that happens, you come from a different place.
Beautiful.
So love it, man.
Beautiful.
Thank you
Thanks,
so
Gary.
much.
Appreciate you.
Same.
Thank you for your time with us and for all the tips.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming on tonight, Joanne.
I got a simple one for you here. Being an alumni, it is great to hear such a deeply profound philosophical voice coming out of NYCC. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome.
A chiropractic finds you. You don't. You know that's how it works. That's why you
Yeah.
end up getting into the profession. And it doesn't matter what school you go to. That's the whole thing too.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
No doubt.
All right, Tim. Thanks for coming on tonight. Like I said, they're about a half an hour long.
Great. Thank you so much.
Hope to
everybody.
see you
Thanks, Tim.
Saturday. We have our Saturday Night Live this weekend at the the church in White Plains.
Yeah, look forward
So
to it.
anybody can come, anybody wants to come to that. We look forward to having you there.
Great.
And I look forward to seeing you there, buddy. Everybody have a
Great,
good night.
Thanks,
Good
everyone.
night.
Thanks,
Enjoy,
brother.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Johnny.
Thank you, everyone.